What is up YouTube? Crafting Cars here, happy Tuesday. Now as the title suggests, we have ran into some problems with the Civic. Surprise, surprise. Now for problem number one, as you can see, I've got my valve cover off the car here. And the reason for that is I had a little bit of an oil leak due to a mishap with my valve cover seals. What the issue was the valve cover seal I was running around the valve cover on the outside was made by Felpro, and the valve covers seal that I was using to seal up the spark plug holes, that was OEM Honda. Now the problem with that is the Felpro and the OEM Honda seals were sitting at different heights, and this allowed the oil to seep past the OEM Honda seals around the spark plugs and end up filling every single spark plug tube up with oil. So you can imagine my surprise when I go to check my spark plug, pull my spark plug boots, and every single one of my spark plugs is just taking a nice bath in oil. Now luckily for me, this is a really easy fix. Just had to pick up a new gasket set. I'm gonna be using the outside gasket as well as the spark plug seals from the same brand, and that should fix this no problem. But yeah, this is exactly where the sealing surfaces are around each of these tubes. This is right where it was leaking. So you can see right down in the spark plug hole, every single one of these was filled with oil. So we'll get that taken care of. The more important issue lies over here. Now as you can see, I've got my exhaust off, my oil pan, windage tray, a connecting rod end cap here, as well as my oil pickup, and let me explain why. So this would be problem number two. I noticed that as I put more and more miles on this engine, that my oil pressure was starting to dip lower and lower and lower. It got to the point where after a couple hot runs, my oil pressure would be below 10 PSI for a hot idle, which is a little bit concerning on a fresh engine with an upgraded oil pump. So Gideon and I decided, it's probably a good idea that I pull the oil pan and do a little inspecting to see if we can run any problems that pop up right away, anything that's really easy to find. So that day I got home from work, decided to pull my exhaust off, which is pretty simple. It's just a bunch of 12mm bolts. Pull my oil pan off, which is also pretty simple, just a bunch of 10mm. And that's all pretty easy to disconnect now, since all the lines I have running to my turbo and my oil pan are AN lines, which can basically crack them loose with any wrench or anything like that, and you can loosen them up with your hands. So I got basically everything I needed off the car in like 30 minutes. So that's nice. That's one of the benefits of doing everything kind of clean and neat on your engine and having a fresh engine to work on. So oil pan off, exhaust off. The next thing I wanted to pull off was the oil pickup screen. And that looks like this. This is where your engine sucks up all the oil from. Now, I've had problems in the past with my last turbocharged D-series motor of this thing getting clogged up and dropping oil pressure. One time I had paint coming off the oil pan clogging this up, and one time I even had nuts that had fallen off my rocker arms down into my oil pan and then sucked up into this, messing up my oil pressure as well. Both those things are very scary, but that wasn't the case this time. I pull it off and the screen looks pretty good, but I'd start rattling it around and you could hear there's pieces of metal in there, so I was really concerned. Let me show you what I found. So all three of these metal pieces were inside of there. Now you might not recognize them, maybe some Honda guys will recognize them, but these are oil squirter jets, or at least a piece of the oil squirter jets. So in a Honda 4-cylinder engine, you got 4 of these bad boys, and they basically kind of screw into the bottom of the block, and then they're in charge of squirting the cast pistons with engine oil just to keep them nice and clean. And they're really important. If I still had cast pistons in this engine, my engine would be blown up right now by my pistons melting. But since I have forged pistons in this engine, I actually don't even need oil squirters, I got very, 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 very lucky with this one. So I'm gonna actually end up deleting these, but what happened was, these things must have been in a certain position where when we built the engine, we were able to turn it over and the pistons would never collide with these oil squirters. But after some time, the engine gets hot, shit expands, especially when you're running it hard, and those pistons must have hit these or just tapped them enough to bust them off, drop them into the oil pan, and then the pressure from the oil pickup tube sucked them right up. So every single one of these was sitting in the oil pickup tube, so I was dropping pressure by blocking off my pickup, and I was also dropping pressure by opening up the ports for the oil squirters, since these are all broken in half. So yeah, another thing I ended up doing was pulling off one of the connecting rod bearings just to see if we had any damage. I'll show you what those look like. Now this is the connecting rod end cap and bearing. This is what the bearing looked like. Not too bad. These are silver from the factory, and as you can see, this one doesn't have too much wear, thank goodness. This is the very bottom of the piston assembly, And when these boys wear out pretty bad, this is when usually you can hear the crankshaft knocking around in there, and then that's when you get that famous like engine knocking noise, and then before you know it, Rodney comes right out the side of the block. So it's very important that these are in good health, and thank God mine still are. So my plan of attack for fixing the problem with my busted off oil squirters here is to actually plug up the oil squirter plugs. These are Golden Eagle oil squirter little block off plugs, and these not only get rid of the issue of possibly having your pistons contact your oil squirter, but it actually gains you a couple PSI of oil pressure, which is pretty important on turbocharged Honda engines. So I'm gonna pull out the old assemblies. I think I've still got one intact, so I'm gonna show you what these are supposed to look like, and then I'm gonna show you how I put every single one of these bad boys in there. And yeah, it should be pretty easy. The only problem is it's kind of like up there in the block, so I'm gonna have to use a ratchet, an extension, and it looks like a 6-point socket that's probably like 10 millimeters. So let's get to it. All right, so as you can see in the top right corner of each of these areas, you have the oil squirter. You can see there's one right there. You can see the one right there, one right there, one right there. Every cylinder gets one. And I'm gonna set the camera up and I'm gonna pull each one out of there for you so you guys can get a better look at them.
These walls are disappearing, and I don't seem to care. And gets larger and larger, and there's colour everywhere. The bodies are lighter than ever, and floating off the ground. Noises from the windows, but I can't hear a sound. And all of my limitations begin to fade away. In this place I have freedom, it's here I wish to stay. Thoughts become.
So here's what the squirter's like taken out. As you can see, that's the only one that's still intact. All these other ones, totally busted. So now I'm gonna go ahead and throw these plugs in their place. I'm gonna throw a little bit of Loctite on them, and then I'm gonna go through with a torque wrench, because I'm guessing there is a torque spec for these, and I'm gonna go ahead and torque them all to spec.
Distant feelings, going with the flow. I'll just sit still now and begin by letting go.
So the general consensus on the internet is 8 foot-pounds, and I believe everything I read on the internet, so I'm gonna go ahead and torque these down to 8 foot-pounds.
Bodies are lighter than ever, floating off the ground. Noises from the windows, but I can't hear a sound. And all of my limitations begin to fade away. In this place I have freedom, it's here I wish to stay. Thoughts become.
Alright, so that's all of them. They're all plugged up. And I've got each one torqued to 8 foot-pounds, and I went back and double checked just to make sure I got them all torqued right. And I think while I'm down here, I might as well put that rod cap back on. So all I gotta do is lube up this hardware. I still got some ARP assembly lube. So all I gotta do now, lube up this hardware. I still got some ARB. Alright, so all I gotta do now is lube up these threads here with some ARP assembly lube, and then I'll be able to torque this thing down. Gotta make sure it's oriented in the right way with the tang facing the right direction, and it's 43 foot-pounds.
Distant feelings, going with the flow. I'll just sit still now and begin by letting go.
All right, and since that is now on there, I can go ahead and put on my windage tray using these bolts right here.
These walls are disappearing, and I don't seem to care. Noises from the windows, but I can't hear a sound. I can't hear a sound. I can't hear.
All right, and that is it for the windage tray right there. I'm still waiting. I want to put my pickup tube and oil pan on today, but I'm still waiting on a OEM Honda oil pickup tube gasket right here. So that's coming on Thursday, so I'm gonna have to wait a little bit for that. But I guess I do still have some time to replace that valve cover gasket, the spark plug seals, and of course throw on the actual valve cover. Now, while I had it off, I went ahead and resprayed it to get it looking nice again, because, you know, I chipped it up and had a bunch of oil stains and stuff on it just from, you know, every day working on the car. But this is a aluminum, this is a DeWell brand spark plug cover, and I got some DeWell brand hardware I'm going to be trying out as well. Just because I've had some quality issues with the Skunk 2 hardware that I had on before. I've actually had like a couple washers strip out, like the insides being the wrong size, and I've had a couple studs snap as well. So we're going to be trying out this new hardware, new spark plug cover, and hopefully when I throw all the gaskets on, we're not going to have any leaks.
All of my limitations begin to fade away. In this place I have freedom, 'cause here I wish to stay. Thoughts become distant feelings, going with the flow. I'll just sit still now and begin by letting go. These walls are disappearing, and I don't seem to care. It gets larger, larger, there's color everywhere. Bodies are lighter than ever, floating off the ground. Noises from the windows, but I can't hear a sound. 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 Begin by letting go.
And just like that, we're back at it. Now, this hardware might not be as fancy as the Skunk 2. I guess it's not as low profile. It doesn't have like the fancy text on it. But I tell you what, this hardware did not break when I installed it. So far, DeWell products, you get 5 stars from me. Good deal, good deal. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. If you haven't yet, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also check out Friday's videos. Gideon's getting really close to starting up that go-kart, so that's super exciting. As far as the Civic, I gotta get that oil pickup tube on, oil pan on, throw the exhaust back on, make sure everything's good to go. We'll take it for a couple drives, and then hopefully everything is back to normal. Hopefully we fix the issue, because this dyno day is coming up in 15 days, so can't have her blow up just yet. So stay tuned for that, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.